Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's go ahead and get week 13 started with Mailbag Monday. Now, first up, last week we brought in an observation about Chrysophylax, the dragon from Farmer Giles of Ham, and how he transported treasure, including putting down an enormous load and offering to carry Giles' treasure back to his home. Now, thanks to Baragon for that. Also thanks to Baragon for yet another Draconic observation that brings us right back to my original guess as to one of Smaug's possible methods. Baragon points me to a passage in Turambar and the Foaloke. Now that is in the Book of Lost Tales, Part 2, that's Volume 2 of the History of Middle-earth. It's the very first version of the story of Turin, and there we read, "Already greater far had this worm waxen than in the days of his onslaught upon the Rodothlym, and greater too was his hoarded treasure. For men and elves and even orcs he slew or enthralled, that they served him food to slake his lust of precious things, and spoils of their harryings to swell his hoard." Or enthralled, to serve him food and satisfy his lust for treasure and spoils. Now, if the Foaloke, that's the worm that would eventually become Glaurung, could enthrall men and elves and orcs for this purpose, we're right back to where we started, and it's not out of the question for Smaug. Thank you, Baragon. Now, as for this week's mailbag question, Ella W. writes in with an observation that I'd not noticed before, and then the questions that would naturally stem from that observation. I've been thinking about how people react when faced with the decision to either seize the ring or not. Interestingly, I've noticed that many people laugh or smile after rejecting the ring. Aragorn smiles in The Prancing Pony. Galadriel laughs when Frodo offers her the ring, and Faramir also smiles and laughs when faced with the ring. That is a fascinating observation, Ella, and I don't know that I ever noticed that uniform response. Now, Ella goes on to ask a few obvious questions in light of this. Do you think this has any meaning? Is it just coincidence? Or does it tell us something about the ring? Or perhaps it tells us something about the people faced with the ring. Maybe they don't want to admit their temptation. Interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look at the text. In Strider, that's Book 1, Chapter 10 of The Lord of the Rings, we read Strider's reaction to Gandalf's letter as he menaces Sam a bit. "If I had killed the real Strider, I could kill you, and I should have killed you already without so much talk. If I was after the ring, I could have it now." He stood up and seemed suddenly to grow taller. In his eyes gleamed a light, keen and commanding. Throwing back his cloak, he laid his hand on the hilt of a sword that had hung concealed by his side. They did not dare to move. Sam sat wide-mouthed, staring at him dumbly. "But I am the real Strider, fortunately," he said, looking down at them with his face softened by a sudden smile. "I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and if by life or death I can save you, I will." In this case, the smile appears to be to comfort the hobbits and reassure them of his loyalty. Like we talked about on the Prancing Pony podcast in episode 126, Aragorn has thought this moment through. Quoting Paul Kocher's Master of Middle-earth, we observed that Aragorn could easily take the ring from the hobbits by force or fraud, and use its magic to win his long-sought throne and with it the maiden he loves, has not failed to cross his mind. Like every other leader of the West, he is given one fateful chance to yield to its temptation, but he conquers it and is never bothered by it again. The letter from Gandalf says that Strider knows our business, so it's clear he knows about the ring. I can only conclude that Aragorn has long considered this possibility and rejected it even before it came before him. Now, Galadriel's smile seems different, but I believe it demonstrates something similar. In her case, we read in The Mirror of Galadriel, Book 2, Chapter 7, that Frodo offers her the one ring. Then Galadriel laughed with a sudden, clear laugh. "Wise the Lady Galadriel may be," she said, "yet here she has met her match in courtesy." That laugh has a feel of genuine surprise at Frodo's bold play, rather than a desire, as Ella asks, to maybe not want to admit her temptation. But the thing is, we know more than just what the text tells us here, because Tolkien offers us more insight into this moment in letter number 246. There he says, "It appears that Galadriel conceived of herself as capable of wielding the ring and supplanting the Dark Lord. Galadriel's rejection of the temptation was founded upon previous thought and resolve." In other words, like Aragorn, she had considered this moment. Faramir is, of course, the one of these three who could not have imagined this moment ahead of time, who would never have been able to work through the temptation. before it was in front of him. Now, after he gets one of my all-time favorite lines, "I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway. Not were Minas Tirith falling in ruin, and I alone could save her so, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory." And yes, I have that line memorized. Faramir is put to the test. Sam gets a little loose-lipped and actually mentions the enemy's ring. Then we read Sam saying, "You've spoken very handsome all along, put me off my guard, talking of elves and all. But handsome is as handsome does, we say. Now's a chance to show your quality." "So it seems," said Faramir, slowly and very softly, with a strange smile. "So, that is the answer to all the riddles. The one ring that was thought to have perished from the world. And Boromir tried to take it by force? And you escaped, and ran all the way to me. And here in the wild I have you, 2 halflings and a host of men at my call, and the ring of rings. A pretty stroke of fortune, a chance for Faramir, captain of Gondor, to show his quality." Now, this smile does seem different than those of Aragorn and Galadriel. In those cases, they had both imagined this moment. They had both defeated this temptation in advance. Faramir couldn't, but he did imagine the temptation generally, didn't he? He imagined being faced with the fall of Minas Tirith, preventable only if he used Sauron's weapon to save the city. He rejected that temptation then when it was a hypothetical, and he rejects it now when it's real. Now, his smile, described as strange, I think it speaks more to 2 other things. One, the surprise at finding out precisely what Isildur's bane is, but mostly the irony at being the one to have a choice to take it after Boromir's death, knowing what his father would want. Now, when comparing these 3, then, I don't think the smiles or laughter say anything about the ring itself. I do think they speak to certain qualities of the individuals involved. Aragorn's gentle reassurance and utter willingness to sacrifice. Galadriel's amazement and really laugh of surprise. And then Faramir speaking more to his family dynamic than perhaps any other individual element. But it's a great question, and it gave us a chance to look deeply into the text in 3 different places, so thank you, Ella. Now, folks, that does wrap it up for Mailbag Monday. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer, please email it to barnum@theprancingponypodcast.com. Let him know it's for today's Tolkien Times, and I'll get to it as soon as possible. Please visit patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show and get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a lot more. Finally, join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Tolkien Tuesday as we learn more about the professor himself. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Please follow or subscribe on your podcast apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.